Something is very wrong behind the scenes, and the internet can feel it. What started as a whisper has now erupted into a full-blown shockwave after Candace Owens allegedly hinted at a secret Kirk never wanted the world to know. And the way she dropped it? Cold, calculated, and absolutely devastating. People are calling it betrayal. Others are calling it karma. But everyone agrees on one thing. This wasn't an accident. Sources say Candace didn't just mention something private. She allegedly exposed a detail so personal, so unexpected, that even her longtime supporters were left stunned. The room fell silent, timelines froze, and suddenly thousands of people were asking the same question. Why would she reveal something like that? And if what she's suggesting is even partially true, what else has been hiding under the surface? Social media is already in meltdown mode, full of theories ranging from messy personal drama to the kind of internal betrayal no one saw coming. And yet, we still don't have the full picture. Only hints, implications, and a growing sense that something explosive is about to break wide open. Because if this alleged leak is what people think it is, then this scandal is just getting started. For anyone who's followed the conservative media landscape over the past few years, the names Candace Owens and Kirk aren't just familiar. They're foundational. They've built empires on their voices, their convictions, and their ability to dominate every room they walk into. Charlie, with his polished debates and fast-paced political commentary, has cemented himself as a rising force for young conservatives. Candace, bold and unapologetic, carved her own lane as the woman who speaks the truth others are too afraid to say. To their millions of followers, they represented confidence, consistency, and a kind of unwavering loyalty, not just to their beliefs, but seemingly to each other. They appeared together at rallies, shared stages at major conferences, and spoke about the importance of integrity, accountability, and unity. They didn't just preach values. They branded themselves as protectors of them. But behind the curated photos and carefully worded speeches, insiders say things were more complicated. Their relationship, once described as professionally inseparable, reportedly began to strain in subtle ways. Not enough to raise red flags publicly, but just enough for those close to them to feel a shift. Fewer joint appearances, shorter collabs, and an unusual tension in interviews where they once finished each other's sentences. People noticed tiny cracks long before the alleged scandal surfaced. When Charlie made a controversial statement during a live Q&A last year, Candace's reaction went viral, a small eye roll, barely half a second long, but enough for viewers to flood the comments with things like, "Candace is done with him." The vibe is definitely off. Something happened behind the scenes. Still, nothing compared to what came next. As their brands grew, so did the pressure. Events became bigger, stakes became higher, and the expectation to maintain a unified front intensified. Meanwhile, rumors circulated about disagreements, not just about politics, but about personal decisions, team members, and private conflicts neither of them addressed publicly. Then came the moment people are now revisiting with fresh eyes, an awkward interaction during a podcast taping just months ago. Charlie made a personal joke about privacy and keeping certain things off the record, to which Candace responded, "Oh, trust me, some things always come out eventually." At the time, viewers laughed. Today, that clip is resurfacing with captions like, "She was hinting even back then. This didn't come out of nowhere." Candace knew exactly what she meant. And with the alleged leak now dominating social media, every small interaction between them is being dissected like a crime scene. But the story gets even more complicated. The two have long maintained reputations built on moral authority, the kind of public personas that rely heavily on being seen as principled, honest, and unshakable. So when Candace allegedly dropped hints about Charlie's hidden truth, it hit harder than a typical celebrity scandal. It wasn't just personal, it clashed with everything he stands for publicly. Screenshots are starting to circulate of a recent live stream where Candace, without naming names, said, "Some people preach transparency, but they're terrified of their own." Another post that fueled the fire was a cryptic tweet reportedly sent just hours before the alleged leak went viral. "Secrets don't stay buried. Not when the truth is bigger than someone's pride." Fans immediately speculated she was referring to Charlie, though her team has stayed silent, and that silence is only making the situation feel more heated, more suspicious, and more emotionally charged. And with the alleged DNA test news now out in the open, everyone is looking back at their history, their partnership, and their on-screen chemistry, searching for clues they might have missed. Because suddenly every smile looks forced, every interaction feels loaded, and every public appearance seems like it was hiding something underneath. The cracks weren't just cracks. They were warnings. Warnings no one recognized until it was already too late. And now, those warnings are setting the stage for the alleged betrayal that's about to erupt into something much bigger. To understand how everything spiraled into the chaos we're seeing now, we have to go back months, long before the alleged DNA drama exploded across social media. The shift didn't happen in one moment. It was a slow unraveling, a series of subtle missteps, whispered disagreements, and private tension that started bleeding into the public eye, even if no one realized it at the time. It began with what fans now call the retreat incident. Several witnesses from a political retreat earlier this year reported that Candace and Charlie had a heated exchange off-camera. One attendee claimed, "You could feel the energy shift instantly." They weren't arguing about politics, it was personal. Another said Candace walked out of the room looking furious, while Charlie remained seated, staring at his phone, shaking his head. At the time, these were just rumors. Nothing confirmed, but hindsight makes everything look different. A few weeks later, a podcast clip surfaced where Charlie tried to joke about dealing with people who can't keep their emotions in check, and Candace, without missing a beat, replied sharply, "Better that than people who can't keep their stories straight." Fans laughed, but now that comment has gone viral again with captions like, "She was warning us." The timeline gets even more tangled around the moment. Sources say Charlie privately confided in a close circle about a personal issue, something he didn't want public, something people now believe was connected to the alleged DNA test. According to someone who claims to have been in the room, he said it needed to stay confidential. He didn't want even his closest associates knowing. Yet somehow, within weeks, tiny breadcrumbs began appearing online, vague tweets, offhand comments, low-level gossip spreading quietly through niche forums. And then Candace's behavior shifted. She started posting cryptic messages on social media, nothing explicit, but enough to make followers suspicious. One tweet read, "If people lived the truth they preach, scandals wouldn't exist." Another said, "Some masks don't just slip, they shatter."
Fans didn't know what she meant.
Some assumed it was about political hypocrisy. Others theorized it was personal drama in her inner circle. But a few sharp-eyed watchers pointed out that she posted those messages shortly after being seen backstage with Charlie at a live event where, reportedly, they barely spoke. Then came the tipping point, the moment everything shifted from subtle tension to a full alarm. A well-known journalist tweeted that an internal conflict involving two major right-wing personalities was about to blow up. They didn't name names, but within hours, people online started connecting dots, pulling old videos, analyzing interactions, and making predictions. When Candace allegedly made her now infamous comments alluding to a private test someone is terrified of becoming public, the internet detonated. Charlie's name began trending immediately. Even though she never said it directly, the implication was unmistakable, and that was all it took. Commentators jumped in within minutes. One viral TikTok creator said, "If this is what I think it is, the conservative world is about to witness a meltdown." A popular YouTube host posted, "How does something this personal get hinted at on a public platform?" And one political influencer wrote, "Candace doesn't say things by mistake. If she said that, she meant it." Charlie's supporters rushed to defend him, insisting the whole thing was misinterpreted and weaponized gossip. Critics, meanwhile, claimed the silence from Charlie's camp spoke louder than any denial. That silence stretched for hours, then days, until social media filled the void with theories, rumors, and emotional reactions. Behind the scenes, things allegedly grew even more intense. According to a source familiar with Charlie's team, frantic calls were made, messages deleted, PR advisors brought in, and internal discussions escalated. It wasn't panic, the source said. It was more like shock. like he couldn't believe someone he trusted would hint at something so personal. And through all of this, Candace stayed eerily calm, posting quotes about transparency, morals, and truth finding its way out, while never directly addressing the storm she'd unleashed. The tension is thick, the timeline messy, and the betrayal, whether personal or strategic, is beginning to feel much deeper than anyone expected. And this isn't even the full story, not yet. The aftermath of the alleged leak was nothing short of catastrophic. What began as whispers suddenly turned into a loud, unavoidable storm crashing over Charlie's personal life, his career, and even the public identity he spent years carefully constructing. The contrast between the man people thought they knew and the version now being discussed online couldn't be sharper, and that emotional gap is where the scandal has hit the hardest. Within hours of Candace's insinuations going viral, the ripple effects reportedly reached Charlie's family first. Sources close to the situation say relatives were blindsided, confused, and scrambling for clarity. Some allegedly made panicked phone calls, desperate to understand whether the claims had any truth behind them or whether this was just an exaggerated political feud blown out of proportion. For a family known to stay out of the spotlight, being dragged into an online spectacle felt like a betrayal of their privacy and trust. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, insiders say Charlie's team went into immediate crisis mode. Meetings were held late into the night, with advisors arguing over whether to issue a statement, deny the claims entirely, or remain silent until the chaos settled. But silence only fueled more speculation. The longer he didn't address it, the more people filled the gaps with their own theories, some sympathetic, others unforgivingly harsh. Professionally, the cracks were even more visible. At least 2 major event organizers reportedly reached out to Charlie's team, expressing concerns about potential disruption and reputational volatility. That's PR speak for, "We don't want your scandal overshadowing our event." Contracts weren't canceled. Not yet, but several insiders claimed certain appearances were reconsidered or strategically postponed to avoid controversy. For someone who built an identity around strength and confidence, the idea that his image had become a liability struck a painful blow. On social media, the fallout was immediate and relentless. Loyal supporters defended him furiously, insisting the entire situation was a smear campaign. But critics, opportunists, and rival commentators pounced on the scandal like fresh meat. Screenshots of old speeches circulated widely, speeches where Charlie spoke passionately about integrity, privacy, and personal responsibility. Now those same words were being reposted ironically, captioned with comments like, "Integrity? So where was this when the private test happened?" Funny how the loudest voices about morality always hide the biggest secrets. Practice what you preach, or it comes back to haunt you. Even more brutal were the reactions from influencers who had once worked closely with him. One posted a cryptic message, "Some of y'all would be shocked if you knew what goes on behind the scenes." Another wrote, "This is why I stopped collaborating with certain people." They never named Charlie, but they didn't have to. The timing said everything. The emotional stakes skyrocketed when rumors began circulating about internal fractures within Charlie's organization. A source familiar with the situation said tensions between staff were rising sharply. Some employees allegedly questioned who leaked the information to Candace or whether she pieced it together through bits of overheard conversations, poorly guarded secrets, or private frustrations shared in confidence. The alleged betrayal wasn't just external, it appeared to be coming from within. And that realization reportedly left Charlie feeling devastated. Someone he trusted, someone in his inner circle, may have played a role in the unraveling of his most private issue. That alone, sources say, shook him more than the public backlash. Candace's calmness throughout the fallout only intensified the emotional tension. While Charlie grappled with the implications, she doubled down on her messaging about truth, exposure, and holding people accountable. On a live stream, she reportedly said, "People hide behind their platforms. They hide behind their positions. But truth doesn't care about status." She didn't mention Charlie by name, yet the implication was unmistakable and painful. What made the situation sting even more was the contrast between their public personas. Charlie had worked tirelessly to build an image of control, composure, and moral clarity. Now he was reportedly dealing with panic, frustration, and fear, emotions he rarely let slip in public. On the other hand, Candace had cultivated a reputation for boldness and transparency. So when she made her comments, many fans believed she was simply calling out hypocrisy, even if the consequences were severe. As the days passed, the scandal only deepened. Commentators released timeline breakdowns, fans created theory threads, and each new detail felt like another layer peeling away from the facade both had crafted. It wasn't just about a DNA test anymore. It had become a story about trust, betrayal, and the fragility of reputation in a digital age where secrets don't stay buried for long. And yet, with all the fallout, the emotional distress, the professional strain, the social media war, the public still didn't have clear answers. They only had clues, accusations, reactions, and an overwhelming sense that the real story was still hidden beneath the surface. And that's exactly why the scandal refuses to die down. Because everyone knows the truth hasn't fully come out yet. So now that everything is out in the open, the tension, the alleged leak, the betrayal, the fallout, the question becomes, where does this story even go from here? We watched the rise, the cracks beneath the surface, and the moment everything came crashing down. We saw the alleged betrayal that shook personal relationships, disrupted careers, and exposed a side of both Charlie and Candace that fans were never supposed to see. And even now, after days of emotional unraveling, one thing still hangs heavy in the air. We still don't know the full truth. Was this a moment of moral courage from Candace, or a devastating breach of trust? Did Charlie hide something that contradicts everything he's preached for years? Or is he the victim of a calculated attack from someone who once stood beside him? And the biggest question of all, if these alleged DNA test details are real, who leaked them and why now? These are the moments where the line between public persona and private reality blurs, leaving everyone watching with more questions than answers. And that tension, that uncertainty, is what keeps this scandal alive. But what about you? Do you think Candace crossed a line by hinting at something so deeply personal? Do you believe Charlie's silence is a sign of guilt or just shock? If you were in his position, would you speak out or stay quiet and hope the storm passes? And be honest, do you think someone close to him betrayed him, or is there a much bigger twist coming? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This is one of those stories where the audience is just as important as the people involved. Hit like if you want a deeper breakdown, share this with someone who's been following the drama, and make sure you're subscribed, because something tells me this scandal is far from over.